something that I don't do a lot of people.
Stewart, before we get started, on behalf of Cinequest, I just want to thank the police for reuniting to promote your Maverick Spirit event.
Well, thank you. I'm pretty happy about it, too.
What made you decide to become a musician rather than taking a more conservative path in life?
Once again, like many things in my life, came out and got me. You know, I like to think that I'm in control of my destiny, that I make decisions, I consider the options, and I choose a path. My life hasn't really been like that. I have made a few decisions, and I have chosen certain paths in life, but the really big ones came out and got me, like playing drums and like being a professional musician. When I was at Berkeley, I started a magazine. I was going to be a publisher. I worked at the radio station at KALX. I was the boss jock there. I was in charge of English music. And these were all, those are the decisions that I was making, but I got a phone call and an offer to join a band in London. It was just kind of a summer thing. I was going to go play with this band. The violinist used to be in a band called Curved Air, and so I was going to go play with him for the summer, and then one thing led to another, and I was in a band called Curved Air for 2 years, which is where I kind of got my professional chops. That was 75 and 76. At the end of 76, Curved Air was getting deeper and deeper in debt. It had had a lot of hits about 5 or 6 years before I joined them. I joined them at the very tail end when they were just eking out the last few, dollars that or pounds that they could earn. And they could pay me a salary. It was a pretty good job. I was real happy with it. But I could see that it was the end of an era. All these dinosaur groups were dying. The industry was dying. It was all over. And the punk revolution hit suddenly. And I was just young enough to be able to jump ship on the hippie generation and cut my hair off and join the younger generation, the punk generation. And now Sting and I were about 3 or 4 years too old, actually, and our musicianship was way too developed to be genuine punks. I mean, the Clash genuinely were 20 years old and 19 and 18, and Sid Vicious, he was a roadie, he had no idea what to do with that bass. And we were actual real musicians, and we had to hide that. Actually, you may think I'm joking, but it's true. We had very strict rules in the police. Because we were a punk band, we had to cut our hair. The songs had to be political, kind of. And they had to be very concise, very short, very simple, very stark. And when we had this group at first with Henry Padovani, who is our original guitarist. And one day, Sting and I were doing a session, which is how we actually earned our living. And the guitarist on the session was Andy Summers. And he was this triple scale guitarist, very fancy guitarist, way above our level. And that's where we met Andy. And there's a whole other story about Andy joining the group, and he hates it when I tell this story. So unless somebody insists, I will gloss right past. Okay. I was going to talk about something else, but you forced me. So Andy, we played on this record. We ended up doing a couple of shows with this band. It was called Strontium 90. And so Andy, a couple of people heard of that. Okay, I'll tell that part first. This guy who hired us to play and wakes up 15, 20 years later and says, my God, I've got a solo album and my backing band is the Police. And so he calls me up, he calls Sting up and Andy, he says, look guys, do you mind if I release this record? And man, you paid me 25 quid, which I needed at the time. It's your record, it was a session, you bought it, it's yours, release it. Well, he actually released it under the name of Police Academy. But what's interesting, the reason why I mention it is because the playing on it is much more advanced than you would ever find on a Police record. We got drum fills, bass lines, it's like much more chops, more musical bullshit. The songs are not that great. And you can hear that there's a reason why we imposed this discipline on ourselves in the Police. because they made it about the song. And we squeezed all of our chops and our technique to the, we distilled it. Whereas on the Strontium 90 record, you can hear that we had chops. Okay, now the Andy story. After we played a concert with this guy, and just by some chance, I ran into Andy in London. He tells this story in his book a little bit differently from the story you are about to hear. It's very quick. He pulls me into a cafe, and he says, Stewart, you and that bass player, you got something. I think you got a future, but you need me in the band. I accept. He doesn't like it when I tell that story. But what he doesn't say in his book, which you've got to get, by the way, the book is the perfect companion to this movie. This movie is the fun side, the laughs, because that's what I got. These shots that you saw in this movie, that's what I had. I didn't have any of the Sturm und Drang. I didn't have any of the fisticuffs, the fights, the tears, For one thing, there weren't very many. Mostly we got along. As you can see, we were chuckling and goofing off most of the time. But when we first met, I was telling him, man, we can't afford you. You're not going to last in this group. You're used to, the kind of money you earn. We don't earn that in the Police. The record company, there is no, okay, I'm the record company. There's management. I'm the management. You're looking at it. The road crew, the roadies, that'd be you. But he wouldn't take that for an answer. And besides which, Sting was telling me, he's in the band, we got real music. And I don't care, I just thought he would join the band, leave a week later. And so I resisted because I just didn't think we could afford him. But Andy insisted and Sting insisted, over my better judgment. He joined the group, and he told me that his first mission was to nuke the other guitarist, which took him about 2 weeks. And it was, as I said in the film, Andy's harmonic sophistication which woke up Sting's dormant songwriting. When I first met Sting, I saw him as a bass player. And he was up in this band up in Newcastle, and I invited him down to London. I told him that I had a group. I was lying. But we did have a cool name, The Police. Had a kind of a ring to it. And, when he heard, I had no idea. He was a bass player who could sing. That was really cool because that means that either the guitarist or the bass player needs to sing, because I ain't doing it, and I'm not having some other guy to make us a four-piece. It has to be 3 guys. That was critical design plan. And he could sing a bit. That was cool. I didn't realize how well he could sing. It was his bass playing that turned me on at first. And what I never had any idea about was the songwriting. And that didn't happen until Andy joined the group and could actually play the chords that Sting had in his vocabulary. So the Police really began when Andy joined.
From watching your documentary, it seems like climbing to the top of the music world was a lot of fun. It was something to take pride in, but it also seemed like there was aspects of it that were very personally challenging. Can you talk about some of those?
Well, it is weird. And when you read about Britney Spears in the tabloids and so on, I have a lot of sympathy for her because I know how weird it is. It's very strange when your words have resonance beyond the sound coming out of your mouth. They get printed, they get splashed across the tabloids. Your actions are of interest to way beyond your own world, and you see, and the kid you went to high school with reads about you, and whatever dumb thing you said, it makes you a little crazy. And I think I mentioned this in the film, where now your old friend calls you up, and since your phone has been ringing off the hook, you've changed your number. And a wall goes up. And pretty soon, your old friends can't find you anymore because you've got this wall to keep just this input. Everybody wants to be your friend. And your real friends can't get past everyone else, and a wall goes up, and pretty soon you're all alone behind that wall. And you don't really have an idea of your real value in the world because you know that it's all pumped up, and you know that it's not your personal qualities or anything real. What is real? Who am I? What actually is me? You see this avatar up on the screen, on the front of a magazine, on TV, wherever. You see your picture with people, you know, the fan hysteria, which you saw in this film, and you wonder, what is that? Who am I in all of this? It's a very strange sensation, and I'm beginning to discover this again, actually, to personally be the beans inside the can. And on an aside here, it's easier when you're 25 and pretty than it is when you're 50-something. Last week, we're up there, and we're like, you know, doing a photo session, and we're all there. This is the big shot that everyone's going to be using. We're there like that. And it's not like when we were kids, we got makeup artists and hair, and oh my God, you know. And like, here I am, father of many, you know, suburban dad, you know, like, dressed up like mutton, dressed up like lamb, you know. At least I have enough confidence in the meaning of life at this advanced age that it doesn't throw me off my stride. But it's a little peculiar. And when you're a kid and you don't really know who you are yet, and you haven't really, you know, when you become a parent, when you have children, you understand why you're here, and the meaning of life is revealed. And I'm going to get mushy for just a second. That is permanent solace, permanent validation, the real meaning of life. And I've discovered this again recently, you know. Damn, I can't even remember the cities. Oakland. Big stadium, sold out in 25 minutes. When I heard that, my heart raced for about an hour. 2 hours, you know, for an hour, I'm going, yeah, we sold out. Hey, yeah, baby. 2 hours later, yeah, man, that's really good. By the end of the day, well, that's, yeah. A week later, I need another one. And the same with the Grammys. They're up on my shelf. I walk past them. I look at them. Zip, nada, no reaction, nothing, nothing. I look at my kids, my family, my life, my wife, my life. That has real meaning. And all of those weird, all that weirditude, you know, Brittany doesn't have that yet. She will. Give her 10 years, and I hope she gets through this. But when you're young, it is very, very weird. And so we got to cut these young pop stars some slack. That is my request.
The life of a film scorer must be completely different from being a rock star. What was it that drew you into the film scoring? Can you tell us how you got into that and why you got into that?
Another local boy, Francis Coppola, got me into film composing. And that was another of those things that just happened. He called up and said, want to do this? Yes! And I didn't know how you do it, but he taught me. And he didn't actually teach me. He taught me the purpose of film composing, and I had to figure out for myself how you do it. But the important part of it, of the lesson, was why and the purpose of it. And in the film, he has a scene. He needs you to feel sad in this scene or happy in that scene. But in this scene, you need to feel happy sad. And then when you get a little bit more deeper into it, it's kind of sad, but with an optimistic kind of silver lining, with a wispy kind of sense of humor threading through it, and an undercurrent of doom. And you accomplish all of this with just 2 chords. And you don't even need to take those 2 chords into a verse, chorus, guitar solo, verse, chorus, and then think of lyrics that rhyme, and then write that goddamn 3rd verse, which is always a problem. There's a couple songwriters in the house, I can tell. In film music, you just get that little moment, that little turn of the plot, and all you need is maybe 15 seconds of music that just like hits that emotional spot. And it was Francis who got me into that business, and boy, I have had 20 years of great fun and deep immersion in that form of art. It's very collaborative, very engrossing, and very rewarding.
Can you talk about a film score that you did and the process you went through of one of your favorite film scores so people can understand the process and how Stewart Copeland functions as a film scorer?
Well, every film is different. And that's one of the good things about film composing, is that films cover every walk of life. Some are romance, some are comedy, some are thrillers, some are other things. Just every human emotion, there's a film about it. Every walk of life, the postman, the murderer, the lover, the swordsman, the astronaut, the politician, everything. So every walk of life, every emotion, every period, the past, the present, the future. Time machine, so you have both. Every culture, you know, Lawrence of Arabia, you know, cowboys and Indians. It's pretty much every aspect of the human condition is hit by a film. And as a film composer, you get to dabble in all these. Directors only get to make 1 or 2 films, you know, a film every 2 years. But film composers, we get to do 4 or 5 every year. And so we get a lot of variety. So to pick of all those movies, one that is kind of the definitive how you do it, maybe I can just cop out and refer you to my site, stewartcopeland.net, where I have a blog of one film that I scored for, actually Angelica Houston was the director. And just because it was a bizarre one, I wrote the whole story down. It's there on, you know, it's called Dinner Tales on that site. But here now, since, you know, none of you are probably computer literate. Yeah, right. Now, just in general terms, the process is this. Getting hired, which is a meeting with the director. And usually, even though, you know, wherever you are, there's films that I really want to do. Oh, please hire me, hire me, hire me. And then down there are people say, God, we got to get Copeland. We got to, please do our film, do our film. So, you know, wherever you are, whether you're Thomas Newman or Danny Elfman or me or Morricone, you're somewhere there where there's films you really want to do and you're hoping they'll hire you, and there's films below you where they're hoping that you will do their movie. And wherever you are, it's like that. So there's getting hired. And you have a meeting, you read the script. Sometimes you go and you can actually look at scenes of the film. They usually haven't finished it by then. So you look at scenes to see if the characters are charismatic and that they really do represent the quality of the script. Many a slip twixt script and screen. So you just check that the movie is as good as you think it's going to be, and so often it isn't. And sometimes this doesn't look like much in a script, but turns out to be really good. Very Bad Things was like that. What incredible! That's my favorite movie that I ever scored. The director drove me nuts. He threw out some of my best cues. That's a long story. Don't get me started on Peter Berg, okay? But the best movie, the one movie that I scored that I can watch again and again and again, it's this dark, hostile, mean-spirited comedy.
What advice would you give to film scorers about working with directors and directors about working with film scores? How can you facilitate that process, given that it sounds like you're speaking in different languages much of the time?
Yes. You speak in a different language to your musicians, that you have to play it, to the director for whom they are playing it. And I will tell you the story of, God, my mind goes blank with these directors. So many films, so many directors. Oliver Stone, Wall Street. He hired Jerry Goldsmith to score that movie, who wrote him a score, beautiful orchestral score. And it just wasn't working for Oliver. And it just had too much luster. It didn't have the atmosphere that he wanted for this world of affluence, but bad affluence. And greed. So I saw the movie and I started talking, just off the top of my head, the inspiration came to me. Dogs. Music is too good for these people. Dogs. Snarling dogs, ripping out each other's throats, growling. And I could see his eyes lighting up. I got hired right there. That was it. Now, I've used that a few times, and it always gets me hired. But Oliver, I have to say, was the only director who actually followed through. They all say, we want something kind of quirky and different, outside the box. They don't want anything quirky and different, and they want it right inside the box. My problem in life has often been the plaintive question that I ask myself in the quiet of night. Where's the fucking box? So if you watch Wall Street and listen very closely, you will actually hear dogs growling and barking and snarling all the way through, kind of interwoven with the actual music. But they're in there, very subliminal. All the reviews of Wall Street came out, and it's amazing the canine adjectives. You know, it's a dog-eat-dog world, you know, attacking the jugular, you know. All the reviews had this doggy kind of terminology.
After The Police, you seem to have settled into a very sublime life of composing for film. You have more time with your family. And then at some point, you decide that it's time to revisit The Police and do your documentary on The Police. What were you thinking when you decided to do that?
Well, that was another accident. I got the film camera as a fluke, shopping on the road. I got this camera, and suddenly there's this cool toy in my hand. And basically it was a touristic impulse. All this cool stuff started to happen, so I wanted to scrape it off. And, you know, like any tourist, is this really, you know, you want to take a picture of it. And so that's why I shot the stuff. And then it went into the shoe boxes and stayed there. Because cutting it was destructive. You know, in Super 8, every time you cut the film, you're destroying it. There's no negative. All you have is the master. And so editing is laborious, for one thing, and it's highly destructive. Now, the younger people here are going to freak out when I tell them that in those days there was no such thing as undo. And when they invented undo was a blessed day on the universe. Well, they invented computers, and then they invented hard drive memory. Memory became cheap, which is kind of poetic. But then they invented Final Cut Pro. And that's another toy. And I had this toy, and it was all about the toy. Ah, this is cool. Now what am I going to cut? And I cut some home movies and stuff. And then I remembered that I had some film digitized for my Super 8 collection. So I started cutting them. Ah, now this is really cool. And as I said a little while ago, it wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't a walk down memory lane. It wasn't nostalgic. It was just, wow, this is great footage. Could have been somebody else's band. Great footage. And as a filmmaker, as a post-production guy, I had 20 years in post-production. And so I kind of knew how to take elements. And so picked up steam, and the obsession hit. And suddenly all I could think about was cutting this movie. Meanwhile, I'm still earning a living as a film composer. At the time, I was doing a series called Dead Like Me on Showtime. That was a fun series. I wish that kept going. I really enjoyed that. But at night, I was working on cutting the home movie from hell. And at first, it was just for my buddies. It was just the show to Sting and Andy and the crew and the rest of the family. But it wasn't until Sundance decided, in their august wisdom, to invite it to their festival that my little home movie became a serious thing. And so, I can't even remember again what you asked me. Did that answer it?
That did answer the question, but let's talk about moving from being focused on the sound to working with visual images and stuff. Was that an adjustment? Did you enjoy it? Do you see yourself doing it again?
Very similar, very similar. More taxing. The ramifications of cutting picture, moving shots around, take a lot more mental energy than moving notes around. There's no cost. You change a melody a little bit to accommodate, you got the cool bass line, so let's just nudge that harmony to accommodate that cool bass line, or nudge the bass line to accommodate the cool harmony. You know, it's pretty easy to do. You kind of do it instinctively. But moving scenes around, you know, you have this shot which has an action and a meaning, but we all want to replace that shot, so bring that shot. That creates a whole nother dynamic. It's a lot more to deal with, and it's, you know, the puzzle of how to make it all work, in the thoughts that you have to hold in your head are more complex and are weightier, and you have to hold more of them In music, you don't hold anything in your head. Ah, dip dee dip dee doo doo dee dee da la 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 la. You know, it's kind of instinctive. But cutting film, man, takes brain power.
Do you see yourself making, producing more movies, or is this a one-shot deal? Forgive the pun.
And I've shaken off this police thing, yeah. Actually, you know, I had all kinds of great plans this year, folks. The movie did pretty well and got a lot of really great attention. I've been going to festivals. I'm like, coming here is the kind of cool stuff I've been doing for the last year. And all of these really cool things started to come out of it. And all these great plans just got blown out of the water by this police thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm loving it. It is going to be an incredible year. I've said this a few times. I'll say it again. We are going to come around the world. We're going to eat your children. We're going to enslave your kings and queens. We're going to burn down your cities. We're going to take over the world. We are the police and we're back. And you know, it took us about a week up in San Francisco for us to get our shit together, you know, because we've all been band leaders for 20 years now. And like, I sit down to play the drums and it's going to be really great, and suddenly the bass player turns around and says, Stewart, could you give me a downbeat on that third beat of the bar there? And I go, what? Did the bass player just tell me something? Fuck off, you know. And, you know, and it sucked for a while there, but you know, it was hard, and maybe that's why it was so exciting, that when we did find the groove, when I did find, you know, we've all changed, and when we did actually figure out how we fit together, because we've all changed shape. I mean, 2 decades have gone by, and when we found out how we did fit together, there was a moment, just a bolt of lightning, when suddenly we're back. This is the reason. This is what it's all about. And we're just it was just a really, really powerful jolt. And it kind of just hit that just as we were leaving, just in the nick of time. Once again, I've said this a few times now, so bear with me. We started off sounding like a high school band. It got worse. Then it started to get better, and we started to sound like a college band. Then we started to sound like a bar band. We could actually get paid for this. But then we really hit the groove, so that by the time we got to the Grammys, we could sound like a world-class mega band for one song. But we got a taste of where it's going to go. You know, Andy has been practicing or something, or eating his Wheaties. God knows what he's been doing for 20 years. The motherfucker's on fire. After 2 decades of playing sophisticated, cool shit, Sting is ready to rage. He's ready to just take no prisoners. He is fit. It's unbelievable how strong that guy is. You know, everybody's been teasing about his tantric sex yoga thing. The guy's a circus act. I promise you, he can sit there on the lotus position, and he does this all day. He's got his trainer and his Pilates machine. The guy, it's weird. But he can get into the lotus position, lean forward on one hand, and do a handstand in the lotus position. He's got so much physical strength, and he's ready to rock. Might have something to do with the fact that I've been eating my Wheaties for 20 years, and I'm just berserk out of control on the drums. By the time we left Vancouver, we feel really clearly, and we can see and just feel it, that we are going to be stronger than we ever were before. And on that note, we're probably done.
I think we are done, because I just saw a very nice woman standing behind the curtain going like this. And I think we're there. Thank you very much.
All.
We are so honored to have you here today, Stewart, to receive our top Maverick Spirit Award for Cinequest. And I hope that you take this back with you and stick it on the shelf somewhere with all those Grammys. And someday when you and Fiona, your lovely wife, which we're so happy to meet her with you and share the day with, after the kids have graduated and are off to college, that you'll look up at that and maybe not remember that we honored you for your career as an artist, for what you've done and what you're about to do, but more so for the time that you have spent with us today. We so appreciate your time that you have come here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored by this. And it has been a blast to be here. You know, this town, this area has just been incredible for me. This particular area of the country has always been really good to me, and this just continues that fact. Ongoing. I'll be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.